So if you live in a gated community, you probably think, the walls and the security guards at the front entrance are what keep you safe.
Right, that's the standard assumption.
Yeah, exactly. You wave to the delivery driver at the gate,
Yeah.
you pass the housekeeping staff in the hallway,
Oh.
and you just assume the perimeter is secure because everyone inside has a reason to be there.
Right, they have a badge, they belong.
Exactly. But we're doing a deep dive today into a newly declassified labor movement and security intelligence report. This covers January to April 2026.
And the findings are honestly pretty shocking.
They really are. It proves the complete opposite of what we normally think. The most sophisticated surveillance operation mapping out your vulnerabilities, it isn't happening from outside the fence.
No, it's being conducted by the people you just hired to clean your floors.
Right. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking this data set of 86 highly detailed documented observations, and they track how everyday routine labor movement is evolving into, structured professional pre-surveillance.
Yeah, it's a massive shift.
Our mission today is to sort of shortcut your path to understanding how routine labor can turn into a high-risk security threat. We're specifically focusing on the deeply unsettling data surrounding housekeeping staff.
It really completely flips our traditional understanding of threat detection right on its head. I mean, we are culturally conditioned to look for the outsider, right?
Like the guy in the ski mask or whatever.
Exactly. We look for the person jumping the fence or the unauthorized vehicle. And because of that bias, we become blind to the people who are already inside the perimeter.
We just tune them out.
We do. But before we get into the actual, physical tactics these actors are using, we really need to ground this in the numbers.
Oh, for sure. The math is crucial here.
Right. We need to understand the statistical tools that prove this isn't just paranoia or, someone being overly suspicious of their neighbor staff. This is a mathematically validated reality.
I'm really glad we're starting with the math, because when you first hear a claim like, the housekeeping staff is running a surveillance operation, the immediate reaction is total skepticism.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like a spy movie.
It really does. But the statistical analysis in this report completely shuts down the argument that these are just random, isolated incidents.
Yeah. The researchers used two specific statistical tools to validate the behavior. They used an ANOVA test and a chi-square test.
Okay, so break those down for us. What's the ANOVA test doing here?
So an ANOVA test, fundamentally, it looks at the variance between different groups. So if you compare, say, a temporary migrant construction worker to a permanent resident hired housekeeper, the ANOVA test strips away the random noise of everyday life.
Got it.
And it came back with a p-value of 0.00002.
Wow. Which, in the scientific community, anything under 0.05 is statistically significant, right?
Exactly. It's highly significant.
Meaning that the suspicious behavior they are observing is structurally linked to the specific type of labor.
Yes.
Like, if a delivery guy is genuinely lost looking for an apartment, his wandering is random. It's scattered.
Right. He's just looking for door numbers.
Yeah. But what the ANOVA test shows is that the wandering of these flagged individuals isn't random at all. It happens in a highly structured, repeatable pattern.
And then the chi-square test reinforces that even further. That one came in with a p-value of 0.00059.
Okay, and what does the chi-square actually look at?
It looks at the frequency of categorical data. So it tells us that these behaviors aren't just happening by chance. They are being systematically applied by certain groups drastically more than others.
And when they categorize these primary labor groups by risk intensity, the results were incredibly counterintuitive.
Oh, totally backwards from what you'd expect.
Right. You would naturally assume the highest risk would be temporary or external workers. Like, I don't know, migrant labor brought in for a quick 3-day masonry job.
Right, because they have no ties to the community.
Exactly. But the data shows the exact opposite. Migrant labor actually scored the lowest on the risk gradient.
Yeah, they averaged only 2.0 red flags per observation.
And those were mostly very low-intensity behaviors, right?
Yeah, exactly. Their behavior is much more likely to be just routine or genuinely confused.
But then you look to the other end of the spectrum. The absolute highest risk category is housekeeping and resident hired staff.
It is. They averaged 3.60 red flags per observation.
Which is a huge jump.
It is. And the chi-square test showed they have a high clustering at 4 to 5 simultaneous red flags.
So they're not just doing one weird thing.
No, not at all. When a housekeeper is flagged in this dataset, they are executing a complex signature of multiple pre-surveillance behaviors at the exact same time.
That makes me think of like a cybersecurity penetration test, but in the physical world.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, because hackers don't usually try to brute force their way through your firewall anymore. That's way too noisy.
Right, they'd get caught instantly.
So they steal a guest password, log in quietly, and spend weeks just mapping your server architecture from the inside. And that's exactly what these housekeepers are doing. They're using trusted credentials to map the physical network.
The technical term for it is trusted access exploitation.
Trusted access exploitation. Wow.
Yeah. Internal staff roles provide the perfect cover for casing a property. I mean, they have legitimate access, they have proximity to your most valuable assets, and most importantly, they have the freedom of movement.
Right, they can just walk around the property without arousing any suspicion at all.
Exactly. The perimeter is basically an illusion at that point.
So the threat has fundamentally shifted. It's gone from external threat perception, keeping the bad guys out, to an internal behavioral reality.
Yes. We really have to monitor what the people we've allowed inside are actually doing.
Okay, so they have the trusted access. But looking at a building and actually mapping its vulnerabilities are two very different things.
They are.
Because if a housekeeper, holds their phone up to record the ceiling cameras or starts taking notes on a little pad, security is going to spot them immediately.
Obviously.
So how are they gathering this intelligence without blowing their cover?
Well, the tradecraft is incredibly subtle. It relies almost entirely on visual cues that blend right into their daily routine.
Okay, like what?
The report highlights this phenomenon called the composed scan.
The composed scan.
Yeah. Standard workers, delivery drivers, domestic staff, they are almost always operating with a sense of urgency. They want to finish their tasks and go home.
Right. Time is money for them.
Exactly. But the individuals flagged in this data set, they move with an incredibly slow, deliberate pace.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they are completely unhurried because their primary goal in that moment isn't their actual job. Their priority is visual data collection.
Okay, I've got to be honest and push back here for a second, just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this slow, deliberate pace finding. And if I've been scrubbing floors for 8 hours, I'm walking slowly too.
Fair point.
I might even be staring blankly into space. So are we sure we aren't just criminalizing tired workers here? How do we definitively know this is professional surveillance and not just pure exhaustion?
That is a really critical distinction to make, and it goes right back to that statistical clustering we discussed with the ANOVA and chi-square tests.
Right, the multiple flags at once.
Exactly. It is never just a slow walk. It is moving slowly while exhibiting what the report calls perimeter scanning.
Okay.
And that was present in 97% of the flagged cases.
97%, wow.
Yeah. This is a methodical visual sweep of the boundaries, fences, and entry points, and they use a fixed, systematic gaze.
So they aren't just glancing around dreamily?
Not at all. Their eyes lock onto targets. They sweep from top-down to lateral angles, specifically hunting for CCTV cameras, open windows, and door locks.
So they're actively studying the environment. I mean, the report even notes that up to 87.9% of these subjects show surveillance awareness.
Right.
Which means instead of avoiding the cameras, which is what petty thief might do, they actively study the camera placements to figure out the exact angles of the blind spots.
And they are capturing that data using a technique the report calls unusual phone positioning.
Oh, this part is wild.
Yeah. So to your earlier point about how they get the video without holding the phone up to their face, they use a lateral phone tilt. They hold the phone horizontally, and it's often tucked tightly under a shoulder bag, or they hold it flush against their chest.
So it just looks like they're carrying it.
Exactly, but they are covertly recording high-definition video of the property. You don't perform a lateral tilt recording while executing a fixed systematic gaze of a security camera because you're just tired.
Yeah, no, you do it to gather structural intelligence.
Precisely.
And the cherry on top of this visual tradecraft is their physical demeanor. The researchers call it a stoic demeanor. They display a complete lack of microexpressions. Like if a normal person is zoning out and a security guard suddenly notices them staring, they have a startled response.
Right. They jump or they smile awkwardly, look down at their feet.
Yeah, exactly. But these actors display zero startled response, just a totally blank, composed face, even when they know for a fact they've been spotted.
Because they're trained to suppress that natural human reaction to avoid giving away their intent.
Man, that is so creepy. So, okay, they've mastered the physical look,
Yeah.
the blank stare, the slow walk, the hidden camera tilt.
Yeah.
But looking the part doesn't explain how they actually navigate a high-security zone to get that high-def video without a guard just telling them to keep moving.
Right. So they rely on tactical movement. They utilize specific physical maneuvers to artificially extend their time in sensitive areas.
Okay.
The report categorizes one of the main tactics as scene generation.
Scene generation. Meaning what exactly?
It's essentially creating a piece of street theater. They fabricate a totally plausible excuse to linger in a high-security zone.
Oh, like pretending to tie a shoe or something.
Exactly. An actor might pull their scooter over near a main gate and pretend to aggressively adjust their helmet strap or dramatically search through a bag for a lost item.
And that buys them time.
It buys them an extra 30 to 40 seconds in a restricted zone.
And 30 seconds is a lifetime. If you're recording video, it's 60 frames per second. I mean, you can map out the entire shift change at the security desk in that time.
Oh, easily.
The data also mentions a tactic called the slow roll.
Right. The slow roll is heavily utilized by actors on scooters and motorbikes, which, by the way, actually make up nearly 90% of the flagged vehicles in this data set.
Wow, 90%.
Yeah. So they drive their vehicle at a literal walking speed.
Just creeping along.
Exactly. It allows for incredibly detailed, high-definition asset scanning without ever technically coming to a stop.
Because stopping is what would trigger a response from a patrolling guard.
Right. If you stop, you're loitering. If you're moving, even slowly, you're just driving.
They're basically treating the property like a museum exhibit.
No.
But the report details a much more confrontational tactic, too. They call it boxing or cornering.
Yeah, this one is very aggressive.
Because this isn't just about looking at buildings anymore. It's about looking at the people inside them.
Right. With boxing, an actor will deliberately position their vehicle in a narrow stretch of road or near a bottleneck, like a gate.
Okay.
And they restrict a resident's movement. They literally force the resident's car to slow down or stop entirely.
And to an untrained eye, it just looks like terrible, inconsiderate driving, right?
Exactly. But mechanically, it is a forced pause. It allows the actor to look directly inside the resident's vehicle, identify who is driving, note the make of the car, and assess any visible valuables.
That is terrifying. And the coordination required for some of these maneuvers is just staggering.
It really is.
The dataset even picked up instances of inter-entity coordination. They documented delivery drivers flashing lights or giving discrete hand signals to housekeepers.
Yeah, they are synchronizing their movements across entirely different labor categories.
The level of professionalization is deeply concerning, but I think perhaps the most critical data point regarding their movement is the temporal data.
The timing.
Right, the specific timing of when these maneuvers occur. The data set reveals a massive spike in this activity, creating a peak vulnerability window between 5000 VM and 7.0 PM.
That window is huge.
But why that specific 2-hour block? Like, if they want to be stealthy, wouldn't they operate at 2:00 AM when everyone is asleep?
Well, actually, operating at 2 a.m. makes you stand out completely.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Right. If a scooter is slow rolling through a gated community in the middle of the night, every camera and every guard is entirely focused on it.
Because nothing else is happening.
Exactly. The 5:00 p.m. to 7:00 p.m. window is all about weaponizing environmental noise. Think about the rhythm of a residential community at that time.
Right.
Residents are arriving home from work, school buses are dropping off kids, food delivery drivers are swarming the gates bringing dinner.
Yeah, the gates are constantly opening and closing. The security guards are completely overwhelmed just trying to check ID cards and log license plates.
Exactly. There is maximum traffic, maximum visual and auditory noise, and therefore minimum detection.
They just blend right in.
The surveillance activity perfectly blends into the chaotic rhythm of the evening rush hour. They are hiding in plain sight, using the community's own routine as a smokescreen for their operation.
We've established how they scan properties, how they fake phone calls to map blind spots, and how they use the evening rush hour to their advantage.
Yeah.
But here is where the intelligence report takes a really dark turn, because the data reveals a terrifying escalation in their methodologies.
It does.
They aren't just mapping concrete and steel anymore. They are mapping human beings.
Yes. The researchers define this behavioral shift as predatory presence, and it is absolutely the most alarming escalation documented in the data set.
It's a fundamental shift in the surveillance objective, isn't it?
It is. The evolution starts with basic perimeter scanning, looking at fences and cameras. Right.
Then it graduates to tracking assets, like taking inventory of the expensive cars parked in the basement.
Okay.
And then finally, it escalates to high-risk, predatory human tracking.
Wow.
They stop asking, where is the weakness in the building? And they start asking, when is this specific person most vulnerable?
They're mapping human routines for pre-incident staging. It is no longer passive observation at all.
No, not at all.
To understand how chilling this actually is, we have to look at the specific case study detailed in the report. It involves vehicle registration, KL01CG7043.
Right, that case is intense.
Very. We have a male actor riding a scooter and a female resident standing alone on the road, simply waiting for an auto rickshaw to take her to the railway station.
Just a normal evening.
Yeah, and a normal commuter on a scooter would just drive past. But this actor didn't. He engaged in continuous, intense gaze tracking. He stared her down, physically turning his head to follow her every movement across the entire stretch of the road as he drove by. And the persistence of that gaze is the defining factor of predatory presence. It is designed to function as psychological intimidation just as much as it is reconnaissance.
Yeah, they are intentionally invading the resident's psychological space.
Exactly.
It caused the resident significant distress, obviously, leading to a formal escalation with the community's security team.
Mm-hmm.
But I really want to dig into the psychology of this for a second.
Sure.
What makes this predatory presence mechanically different from just, a rude person staring too long?
Well, it connects directly back to the lack of a social startle response we discussed earlier with the stoic demeanor.
Okay, right.
Think about normal human interaction. If you catch a stranger staring at you, the social contract dictates that they break eye contact, right?
Yeah, they look away, they look at their phone, they act embarrassed.
Exactly. But in the predatory cases documented in this data set, when the resident makes direct eye contact, the predator does not break the gaze.
That is so unnerving.
They don't blink, they don't look away, they don't show surprise, they maintain the target lock.
They just keep dead staring at you to see what you do.
Yes. They are actively establishing dominance and testing the resident's response under stress.
Wow.
Will the resident freeze in fear? Will she yell out? Will she immediately call security?
They want the data.
Right. They are gathering vital intelligence on human behavioral reactions.
Yeah.
They want to know exactly how much resistance they will face when they eventually make their move.
And the data shows that they compound this intimidation through route matching. Right? Like matching their scooter speed to the exact walking pace of a resident.
Yes, or by repeatedly showing up at the exact same location at the exact same time every day to establish a pattern of omnipresence.
It is a highly evolved, highly targeted threat that operates right under our noses.
It really is.
So, knowing all of this, the obvious question for anyone listening is, how do we defend against it? What are the actionable steps to detect a threat that is already inside the gate, perfectly camouflaged as a trusted worker?
Well, the intelligence report outlines 3 immediate security enhancements, followed by a massive systemic shift required for long-term defense.
Okay, let's start with the immediate ones.
On the immediate front, security teams must conduct deep CCTV reviews for any flagged vehicles. The dataset specifically mentions Honda Activas and Suzuki Access scooters as the primary vehicles of choice for these actors.
Good to know.
So if a specific registration number is flagged for a slow roll or a composed scan, security cannot just warn them and let them go.
Right.
They must retroactively pull the CCTV footage and track every single movement that vehicle made on the property over the last month to determine exactly what structural vulnerabilities they were casing.
You have to find out what they were looking at before you caught them looking.
Exactly. Now, the second immediate action is the deployment of targeted pulse model patrols.
Pulse model. Okay, what's that?
Well, we established that the blind spot for security is the 5:00 p.m. to 7:00 p.m. evening rush. Traditional security guards often do rounds on a very predictable hourly schedule.
Right, the bad guys can time it.
Exactly. A pulse patrol creates deliberate, unpredictable surges of security presence, specifically during that 2-hour chaos window. The goal is to physically disrupt the environmental noise and break the observer's rhythm.
So make the chaos a little less reliable for them to hide in.
Exactly. And the third immediate enhancement is enabling real-time alerting for repeat entities. This requires tracking rhythmic frequency.
Okay, how does that work?
If an external contractor or a housekeeper consistently appears at a gate they have no operational reason to be at, or repeatedly shows up during times they are not scheduled to work.
Which is a huge red flag.
Right. The digital entry system needs to instantly alert the guards on the ground to a rhythm anomaly.
Okay, so those are the immediate operational band-aids.
Yeah.
You mentioned a systemic shift earlier. How does the entire philosophy of perimeter security need to evolve based on this data?
The entire security apparatus must move from identity-based monitoring to behavior-based monitoring.
It makes total sense.
Because currently, security systems are obsessed with identity. You show a biometric scan, the guard verifies your ID card, the gate opens, and you are implicitly trusted. The system basically stops caring about you.
Right, the pen tester is inside the network.
Exactly. The shift must focus on continuous behavioral analysis. It doesn't matter if you have a perfectly valid ID card issued 10 years ago.
Right.
If you are executing a 12-second composed scan of a boundary wall or utilizing a lateral phone tilt near a surveillance blind spot, your behavior makes you a threat.
Period.
Period. The report highly recommends installing eye-level cameras throughout properties to combat this.
Oh, eye-level cameras.
Yes. The actors know traditional CCTV is mounted 20 feet up on poles, which is exactly why they hide their phones flush against their chests.
Of course.
Eye-level cameras are designed to catch the lateral recording tradecraft where it actually happens.
It's just a constant arms race. We have to adapt our architecture to catch their adaptations.
Absolutely.
But security teams can't be everywhere at once. So for the person listening to this right now, the resident who walks past these workers every single day, what is their role in this new defensive posture?
Well, residents have to cultivate their own behavioral awareness. You intuitively know what the normal rhythm of your building looks like, right?
Yeah. You know who belongs and how they usually act.
Exactly. So watch for the compose scam. If everyone in the hallway is rushing to get their jobs done and one worker is moving at just a glacial pace, systematically scanning the ceiling corners, your internal alarm should go off.
Definitely.
And watch for that lack of a startle response. If you make eye contact with someone lingering near your car and they hold a dead stare without looking away, you have spotted a high-risk indicator.
And when a resident spots that predatory behavior, like if someone is boxing their car in at the gate or route matching them while they walk their dog, how should they report it to ensure it actually gets investigated?
This is the most crucial piece of advice. You have to report the rhythm, not just the isolated event. Do not go to security and just say, a guy looked at me weirdly. That gets written off as a misunderstanding every time.
Right. Sounds too subjective.
Exactly. Tell security the specific behavioral pattern, detail exactly what time it happened, exactly where you were, describe the physical tactic like boxing or a composed scan.
Use the terminology?
Yes. And demand that they check the logs to see if that individual was there yesterday at the exact same time. The threat lives in the statistical pattern.
Report the pattern. That really is the key to unlocking this entire mystery.
It is.
Well, let's synthesize the journey we've just taken through this intelligence report. We started by dismantling the illusion of the secure perimeter using ANOVA chi-square statistical data to prove that routine labor-specifically trusted roles like housekeeping are exhibiting structurally non-random pre-surveillance behaviors.
Right.
We mapped the physical mechanics of their tradecraft, the lateral phone recording to defeat high cameras, the slow composed scans, and the stoic suppression of the startle response. We explored their tactical use of scene generation and slow rolling to navigate properties, leveraging the 5:00 p.m. to 7:00 p.m. environmental chaos to hide in plain sight.
They use the noise.
And most chillingly, we tracked their behavioral escalation, moving from mapping concrete vulnerabilities to executing predatory, targeted human tracking designed to test our psychological responses under stress.
The data paints a highly sobering picture of modern threats. It really does. But it is ultimately an empowering data set.
How so?
Because surveillance tradecraft relies entirely on remaining invisible. Once you understand the mechanics of how they operate, you strip away their camouflage. You can finally see them.
And that is exactly why we wanted to unpack this report for you today. Security is no longer defined by who is allowed inside the walls. It is defined entirely by what those individuals are doing once they gain access. The battlefield has migrated from the front gate to the hallway right outside your front door.
It's a new reality.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought to chew on. If our modern security architecture, the biometric gates, the rigorous ID checks, the high-definition cameras mounted high in the sky, if all of those millions of dollars are entirely focused on keeping the bad guys out,
Yeah.
are those very same systems creating a false sense of peace that actually blinds us to the people who are already inside?